I'm Miwa Messer. I'm the producer and host of Poured Over. And Alia Hanna Habib has great taste. Yes, she's a literary agent. She's written a book. Clint Smith is one of her clients. Hanif Abdur-Rakib is one of her clients. Nicole Hannah-Jones, Adam Serwer, Nathan Thrall, and Merve Emre, who I also, a critic I love. So here's the thing, right? I mean, nonfiction, there are some folks who think, well, I don't know, it's hard, it's homework, it's no, no. Reading nonfiction is so much fun. It is so great. It is so much fun. But also, there aren't a ton of writing guides for how to do this and how to make a career. So we're going to dip in and out of Aaliyah's book. But more importantly, I think we're just going to have a larger conversation about nonfiction because John McPhee, Susan Orlean, Joan Didion, I mean, there are some writers who have pretty much imprinted on, or I imprinted on them, I should say, when I was young and reading them for the first time. But you have a really interesting story as to
Mhm.
how you came to being an agent. And I'd like to start there because I love this story so much.
Well, thank you. Thank you for everything you've said and all your love for my authors. I love them too. And I am so grateful to be here, but also grateful to rep these amazing people. So I don't have a traditional background for an agent or really for publishing.
Hmm.
And I suppose I should define a traditional background for publishing. And it's a predominantly white upper middle class industry, and most people who become agents start out as agency assistants and they work their way up. I had a totally different path. And I should say too that I think that the path is why I love nonfiction. The two are so intertwined for me. I grew up I grew up a very bookish kid, the weirdest, most bookish kid in my hometown of Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. And whenever people use the word nerd to describe someone who goes to Comic-Con, I bristle a little because I'm like, you don't know from nerd. Like a nerd is a little girl in a coal town carrying around a copy of Pride and Prejudice. Like I was so far outside a sense of what was cool. And I always knew I wanted to do something with books. Very long story short, I somehow made it to college. I was a first generation college student. And I came from a place that was so different from the place that I ended up. I went to an elite school in New York City, and I was an alien. I felt an alien both where I grew up and then at Barnard College, where I was surrounded by people whose parents went to college and professors who assumed I had the kind of knowledge I just came to college not having. And I think I loved reading fiction, but I also wanted to know about the world. I wanted the world explained to me. And I didn't take anything about the world for granted. Like, well, why does it look the way it does? Why are
Mm-hmm.
the people who are on top on top? Why do certain people have power and certain people don't? Why is New York City laid out the way it is? And I always had this kind of curiosity about the world around me, which I think a lot of readers do, but I also
Mm-hmm.
had a sense that I needed to learn things, that I needed to learn how the world around me worked as someone who always sort of felt a little bit outside.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's why I loved reading nonfiction and I still love reading nonfiction. Um, and do you want me to talk about how I became an agent? Is that how
I
it's
do because you and I have a tiny bit of shared background. We both spent time as publicists. I, t- I
okay?
took a little I took a little diversion and then I came back to bookselling. But I
Oh,
think this is also a big part of the story.
thank
There's
you. So I always say that being a book publicist is the hardest job one could have. And I said
yeah.
that to a client of mine, and he's like, "Yeah, you and cops." I was like, "Yeah, it's, it's the same." He's like, "You're not gonna
Ow.
start with something like."
Ow.
Yeah.
Where
He's
did
like,
that
"You
come
know how hard
from?
it is." um, so in keeping with that, I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know what I didn't know. I graduated from college, and it
Hmm.
was quite a long time ago. I graduated
Yeah.
in 2000. And that was so long ago that the way that you found a job was you waited for the print New York Times
Yep.
to magically appear in newsstands, a concept I might have to explain to our younger folks. It was like this box on the sidewalk
Yeah.
that you put money in
Yeah.
and you pull out a newspaper, and that's where the ads were.
Right.
And I saw an ad, I looked at the publishing section.
Yep.
I saw an ad for a job at what was then called Houghton Mifflin, a
Right.
publisher that no longer exists because
Yep.
of consolidation. And I saw an ad for a publicity assistant. I
Hmm.
didn't know what a publicity assistant was. I didn't know what a
Right.
publicist was, but I knew I liked books.
Right.
So I took my resume, I took it to the local pharmacy where there was a fax machine.
Hmm.
And is this all like ringing bells for your
Oh,
generation cohorts?
listen. Plain
Yes.
paper faxes were once the highest form of tech that we had in the
Yes.
office.
And it was, 20 cents a fax.
Mm-hmm.
I faxed in my resume, and that's how I became a publicity assistant. But I went in as there's this term to describe voters who don't know a lot about who they're voting for, low information voter. I was a low information job applicant. Like
Right.
I didn't know.
Right.
And
Right.
I didn't know what a publicist was. I didn't know what an editor was. I didn't know what an agent was. I just knew that I liked books.
Mm-hmm.
I got a job in the cookbook section,
Right.
and I didn't know how to cook. And I learned also nobody in the 2000s cooked that was young.
Yes.
Once now all the kids cook.
Mm-hmm.
So once I learned how to cook, everyone thought I was a wizard. Like they were like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, she can make chili. Like she's a genius. But as I was making my way through publishing, I again wanted to like really know how it worked. None of it was handed to you. Nothing about publishing, working in publishing. No one sits down and explains things to you. It's everyone talks about how you learn by osmosis.
Mm-hmm.
And I was interested in other publishing jobs. I didn't think I wanted to be in publicity forever.
Right.
But I had no idea how to move to those other jobs. And as I started to get promoted as in publicity, I increasingly felt that being a publicist, and a publicist is the person who deals with a book at the end of its life. The book is already ready. They're the one who's pitching it to media. And I was very interested in working with a book at its conception, at its very beginning. So I was thinking, oh, I should be an editor. But because of how publishing works, because we get somewhat calcified in our roles, when I decided maybe I don't want to be a publicist forever, I was already in my early 30s. And essentially, I was pretty senior as a publicist. And I said, hey, I'm interested maybe in thinking about editorial. And this was a while ago. Things have changed a little bit. But essentially, I was told no. I was told that I'd aged out of making such a move, and that no one would take me seriously. And there's no way I could be hired as an editorial assistant in my 30s. No one wanted a 32-year-old assistant, and no one wanted to hire me as an editor. So like, oh, what am I going to do next? What am I going to do next? And I had lunch with an agent whose book I worked on. I'd done a good job on her book. Her name's Julie Bauer. She's a legendary agent. Yep. And she said, the way you talk about books, the way you think about books, you should think about becoming an agent. And I hadn't thought of it. And she said, the path is more open. There's less of a system of having to go, up this ladder. I bet folks would talk to you, at least start talking to folks. I did a series of informational interviews, and essentially an agency that repped one of the authors for whom I was the publicist offered me a desk and a phone and said, you're an agent now. And then I was working there when I started out, getting paid just on commission. Agents get paid just on commission. They don't typically, you don't get paid for your agenting work unless you sell something. So here I was in my early 30s, I had rent. I didn't have any kind of financial support at all. And I kind of had to figure out how to make money at this job, but I also had to figure out the very basics of how this job worked. And I learned it, but what also struck me is that I'd worked in the industry at that point for 6 years. And there were some really basic things that I didn't know because the role of the agent was so far removed from the role of the publicist, even though they're in the same industry. So I'll give you a really concrete example. Books, when you do a book advance, it's paid in quarters. So let's say you get $100,000. Yep. You get a quarter on signing, a quarter on the delivery and acceptance of the book, a quarter on the publication of the hardcover, and then a quarter a year later. I did not know that. So the first time I got my first big book deal, which was a book deal in 6 figures, I thought, this is amazing. I'm okay now. I'm going to be able to eat. And then I get the payout. And I was like, you said I could cuss. I was like, fuck. Like, it's going to be years.
Yeah.
How am I going to make money at this job?
Right.
Also, how did I, as someone who was senior in publicity, not know this? Because nobody thought to tell me. No one thought that this was an important piece of information for me to have.
Right. I think also sometimes that's a function of the company too, because I was at a very, very tiny place where you could just be a truffle pig and learn things really.
Mm,
But it really, the house that you were at was like 3 times the size of the house that I was
mm.
at. And like, we didn't really do structure.
Right.
Just kind of wandered around and we did things. And I mean, I once bought a plane ticket to get a box of books to an event the
Those were the
same
good
day.
old
I was like,
days.
right, you could do that, right? Like I once got an author's luggage back from claim check without a claim check. I think maybe the author escort helped. I mean, these were you can't do any of this anymore. But one of the reasons I asked you to tell this story too is like listening to you tell the story, right? Like there's this idea that nonfiction belongs to the world of textbooks or
Mm,
like very dry explanations of things that belong on the financial pages and whatnot. And I'm like, well, actually, like it can be an adventure story. It can be, I mean, it
yes,
can be John Krakauer taking you up and down Everest and me saying,
totally.
if I ever do that, my friends have to like lock me in a box somewhere because that's bananas. I would never do that. So the idea that story can have different, right? It doesn't have to be made up. You
Right.
just have to find the details.
And also in writing the book, I wanted to
Hmm.
model that. And it's
Hmm.
everything I represent tends to have a narrative element. If it doesn't have a narrative element, it has a voice element. If it doesn't have a
Yeah.
voice element, it has a really strong argument. It makes you feel something or
Hmm.
convinces something. None of this is dry. None of this is easy to do. But
Right.
even in writing a publishing guide, you hear that, like you're like, you go to a book party and you're like, or not a book party, a party with normies, and
Right.
you're like writing a book and you're like a nonfiction publishing guy. They're like, oh my God, is she writing a dictionary? No,
Right.
I wanted the way that I tried to write my book was through story,
Yeah.
because I think story is a great way to experience reading, to learn, to become immersed in a world. But something doesn't have to be fiction to have
Hmm.
story, to have narrative elements, to have humor, to have voice. And you see that with a lot of really great nonfiction. You read it, and my author Hanif Abdurraqib is a great example of
Right.
this. When you're reading Hanif, you never forget that you're reading Hanif. It
Right.
sounds so singularly like
Yeah.
Hanif.
Yep.
And something about knowing that is nonfiction, if anything, increases the sense of intimacy
Yeah.
when you're reading that voice.
And that is part of the joy. I mean, the other thing is too, like you use story to build community, right? And everything you're talking about in the book, right? There are editors I know, there are other agents I know, there are writers I've had on the show, writers I've known for years. I mean, there is a very deep sense of community and everyone sort of saying, well, here's a piece of information, here's a piece of information. Like everyone's coming to it from there is no, I mean, yes, there's a conventional wisdom when it comes to money, maybe, and how payouts are made. Like there's structural stuff,
Right,
right?
there's structural. So I also wanted to liberate readers from thinking there's one way to do things.
Exactly.
And that's why I interviewed like about 60 people.
Yep.
And what I saw, I had to learn this too, especially because learning to be an agent is not like learning to be a doctor. You're not
Right.
learning, this is how you stitch a wound. You're
Mm-hmm.
learning by hook and by crook.
Yep.
But then I talked to dozens of agents for this book and seeing, oh, this is the way we all do this one thing. And this
Mm-hmm.
is many, many variations. My hope is that people who read the book will
Mm-hmm.
see that, and also in talking to authors, there's lots of different ways to become a successful writer. And that's reflected in there being lots of different ways to be an agent. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes I'll do like a publishing panel and someone will raise their hand and say, I've heard, and they'll give me this rule about how publishing is supposed to work. Like,
Right.
I've heard, this is a classic example, you need 100,000 Instagram followers to sell a book. This is not a thing.
Right.
You'll think that it's this cookie cutter.
Yeah.
And yes, it helps, for example,
Mm-hmm.
to have a platform if you, and I can talk about what that word means, if you want to sell a book. But there are so many different ways to define that, to build that, and also ways to work around it. And I wanted to show that.
Yeah, no, we are definitely talking about platform because there are a couple of things, and bookseller here saying, hey, it's great if you have followers on Instagram or TikTok or whatever, but how many of them are bots? How many of them are actual human beings? How many of them are engaging? Like, there are all sorts of different measurements, right? Like, it's not just enough to have this magic number behind you. The other thing is, too, if people are used to getting content from you for free, and on social media, it is content, books are books, but content, if they're used to getting it for free, sometimes there is a little resistance to paying for a
Yes,
thing, right? I mean,
totally. Totally. And you have to be mindful of that. But I would
Yeah.
say the flip side of that,
Yeah.
and this I get asked a lot about this, is
Yeah.
how do I know if something's a book? Or how do
Hmm.
I make my Substack into a book? Or how do I make my
Right.
Twitter into a book back when Twitter was more of a thing?
Yep.
I think the way to think about it is, what can a book do
Hmm.
that a Substack can't do? What can a
Yeah.
book do that Instagram can't do? Um, Unless you are, and I think she literally sold this, like Kim Kardashian sold a collection of her own selfies as a book.
Yes.
Unless you are that, you're not going to sell a book that is your social media in book form.
Right.
So social media has a different function.
Hmm.
A book should do this, all the crazy special things a book can do.
Right.
And in terms of platform, there are people who haven't heard of platform, so the platform,
Right.
they don't know what I'm talking about. So platform is the term we use in the industry
Hmm.
to describe an author's recognition for what they do, be it
Right.
their social media following or all these other types of recognitions, which I can get into a little bit. But sometimes people hear the word platform and they think it just equals X amount of social media followers. And that's not the case.
Hmm.
Sometimes your platform is that you are Miwa, who has been a bookseller for X amount of years.
Mm.
You have all of these relationships, this understanding of publishing based on where you have been sitting. And that's shaped who you are as a reader and a thinker. And you have a
Hmm.
podcast. So that is your platform. Sometimes you are, we were talking about this offline. I just sold a book that I'm so excited about. I'm
Yep.
just giving an example of the types of books that I love to
Yeah.
do, by a youngish, I say young, he's my age, which means he was in his 40s, English professor who specializes in Jane Austen. And it's a memoir slash kind of introduction to Jane Austen
Yep.
called My Jane Austen Breakup Album.
Right.
And a title I want to give myself credit with for coming up with.
Hmm.
Um, that's some of the work an agent can do.
Hmm.
And it's the story of how in his 40s, the man that he thought he was going to marry dumped him for a tennis player. And he found himself couch surfing and trying to figure out what his life was
Hmm.
about. And he started to read Jane Austen again with this new eye of like, what can Jane Austen teach me, a
Right.
middle-aged gay man, about dating? So what's his platform? He's not famous. He's an English
Right.
professor.
Right.
He has a couple Instagram followers, and they're mostly people following photos of him like hanging out with his dog. That's not a platform. What's his platform is that he is, in this case, a well-known Austen scholar. He really is a well-known scholar. And he's saying, hey, I'm going to lift the veil here and talk about my sex life and my romantic life in this funny and witty way. That's what's exciting. And that's what makes him an expert.
And newsletters are having a moment. I'm going to work backwards for a second.
Yes.
Newsletters are having a moment right now. And everyone, there are feelings about Substack. You and I are going to put the Substack piece off to the side for a second and just talk about newsletters in general, because that's, but building sort of a following with a newsletter is not quite the same thing as suddenly having X number of followers on whatever your platform of choice is. I mean, I know writers who vociferously stick to Facebook, and I'm like, darling, can I please? No, I can't actually. I can't. It's a platform they know. They're good with it. It works for their life. That's where people are engaging with that. It's fine. Right. But then I've got other people in my orbit who are just like, well, I love doing my newsletter, or they started a newsletter and they're like, I think this is more work than I was planning on, and I really can't do this. So, I mean, part of it is your comfort level, right? There's an authenticity to the platform that you choose. And I think that authenticity should not get lost, especially too, when you're talking about nonfiction, right? Like, you've got to be a bit of an authority, but there has to be an earnestness about the project, because otherwise it feels really cold and clinical and weird, and you don't want to hang out with that person. You don't want to be part of it.
I mean, even more than with fiction, with nonfiction, you are selling yourself. You are the expert, be it on the subject matter or your personal story. And I would say with platform, if you're thinking about social media, got a bit of a tangent there, is you don't have to do it. But if you want to do it, pick something that feels intuitive and natural to you. I have a newsletter, so I'm a huge fan of newsletters. And what I like about newsletters is my readership is readers and writers. So it's an intuitive form for them that they're reading something that's a little longer, a little more engaged, a little, not as snippety as, say, Twitter or Instagram or Facebook. But it's other things that I've tried to do, like I wouldn't be a natural on TikTok. That's not how I think.
Right.
And I think if you're interested in social media, you can experiment. Like, give
Mm-hmm.
yourself, I think it'd be fun to be like, I'm going to try this for 6 weeks, see how it goes. Maybe you'll discover you love TikTok.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're doing it and it just feels like a slog and it's not a good fit, it's going to come across in what you produce.
Yeah.
And no one's going to be interested.
I'm laughing a little bit too because Betsy Lerner, who's also an agent, she's
Oh,
written a couple of craft books, and her latest is a novel called The Shred Sisters. She started reading her journals from her teenage years as TikToks and ended up with a huge following. And it's delightful when I think about it. I would never in my life share my teenage journals with anyone. Thank you very much. Like, I don't even, I'm sure they're long in the trash, but like the idea of this very established agent
That's
novelist,
why it
really,
works. And I
mm-hmm,
think too, so I'm a huge fan of Betsy, and
mm-hmm.
her book was an inspiration for my book. It's like a
Okay.
division apart. She's one of my blurbers. And um what again, if you know her, she comes across as very austere and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
well, but she also she's written quite openly and honestly about her struggles with mental health and mental illness and her family. So that kind of tension between
Mm-hmm,
this, very intellectual agent who lives in Connecticut
mm-hmm.
reading these cringy journals, it totally makes sense for who she is.
Yeah,
And that's why it works and that's why it's fun. And it couldn't be manufactured.
absolutely. And
And
it's hopeful,
yeah,
right? Like it's hopeful too. It's fun and hopeful. And it's like, okay, Betsy, I love you for doing this. Wow, you know?
and you see it and you think, oh, she's become, she's Patti Smith's agent. She's become this person after being this angst-ridden, nerdy teenager. There's something quite satisfying about going on that journey with her. And it makes you want to know more about her, which
Mm-hmm.
social media at its best makes you want to know more, makes you want to keep going.
I mean, the one thing I kind of miss though is we had this golden era of blogs, as it were, in the early aughts, right? Late 90s into the early aughts kind of thing. And we had sites like The All and The Toast, and like the Rumpus was doing, and Roxane Gay and her wife Debbie Millman had brought the Rumpus back in a new way. And there were so many places where you could click in sort of to this very voicey kind of very fun, a little irreverent, sometimes very rude kind of like there was just this moment. And of course, blogs get supplanted by all sorts of social media platforms. Um, and we have fewer media outlets in general. Like you used to be able to flip through a magazine and be like, I'm sorry, who is that? You've picked up clients from
Yeah.
blogs and magazines and all this kind of thing. And it's to me, it's slightly frustrating because
Yeah.
if you're going to be in the New Yorker, like you've kind of made it to be in the New York. It's like you already have an agent, you probably have a book going already. And it's like, where are we finding the new
So
voices again?
I still read lots of media outlets, literary magazines, etc. And I should say my book gives really clear advice about how to pitch them.
Yeah.
So you can't start with the New Yorker.
Yep.
So there's a bunch of really great younger-ish literary magazines like The Drift,
Yep.
this one, or older, more established ones like Paris Review, Granta, that are more literary, that are doing really interesting work that you as a writer can pitch, and that I as an agent look in all the time looking for clients still. Even though I have a big client list, I'm always looking for new talent. But also newsletters have kind of become that space where you find a lot of really voicey writing, and first person writing that used to be on more places like the All and the Rumpus and old Jezebel, even old Gawker.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where it is, but it's become very diffuse.
But Discovery, I mean, this is part of the fun of being a bookseller, right? Like you're walking by a table, even in your own store, and you're just like, wait, what's that? I mean, it happens to me all the time. I just got back actually from store visits in San Diego, and I was like, okay, I can't buy everything, but actually, there's a copy of the Patricia Smith poetry book that's shortlisted for the National Book Award, and we were sold out at a store I was at earlier, so I'm just going to buy it here in San Diego and take it back with me.
I have this thing when I'm shopping in a bookstore, money isn't real.
Yeah, oh, it's absolutely not.
I'm like,
Absolutely not.
it's good for me. It's like, it's healthy. It's like buying a juice. It's, like green juice. It's like, it'll make me glow.
Mm-hmm. Hmm. But
Um,
again, that novelty, right? That discovery. I mean, also just because something has been out for a minute, I was rereading John McPhee,
oh, such a writer.
prepping for an interview last week, and I was like, oh man, why? I haven't read McPhee in a minute, and the answer is, we all have crazy amounts that we're reading at the moment. But suddenly I was in my early 20s again going, oh, right, this is what words can do, right? Like, I mean, and
Oh,
I'm on a river in Georgia and he's eating muskrat and there's a snap. Like, I don't camp. I don't camp. I will hike. I am happy with a 9 mile in and out box camp. Like,
that's more than I would do.
I can hunt. I don't camp and I like a canoe, but I like also to be able to exit and go to a hotel.
Well, that's also why I love that feeling of, because again, I have, I think, an adventurous spirit, but like a
Hmm.
late past. So I don't like to sweat. So that is some of the pleasure I take in nonfiction is the escape in the same way that people do from fiction, except that it's real. So so there, I mean, I will totally, like, I loved Wild.
Yep.
I
When she
loved
throws her boots over the cliff, I'm
gosh,
like,
loved it. I loved Into the Wild.
yeah.
I love anything about the Arctic,
Hmm.
literally anything, but I don't like being cold. But
Right.
I like entering that world imaginatively, and
Yep.
I like entering it through both fiction and nonfiction.
Yep.
Um, but I also think that if you're nonfiction curious, you're not yet a nonfiction reader, that discovery is part of the fun. Like, you just go
Yeah.
to the nonfiction section, be it the essay section or the history section, and there's so many amazing things. Just like when you're, to bring the same mindset you do when you're scrolling
Hmm.
online, and it just sort of pops. You're like, oh, I love that feeling when I'm in a nonfiction section of the
Hmm.
bookstore, knowing that it's real and
Hmm.
knowing the world is wide. Like,
Yeah.
oh, here's Paris, here's China. Like, these places are real, and I could go to them without ever leaving my very cozy apartment.
Well, that, and I mean, you've got to have a really like, curiosity has to be programmed in, right? Like, it has to be part of whatever your factory presets are. Like, you have to be a curious person if you're even going to think about spending time telling a story that needs a little more research maybe than some, or you need to spend, I mean, you interviewed 60 people for this book and I'm not sure I was keeping count. I'm like, yeah, that sounds about right, actually, because every time I turned around there was like, oh, I know that person, I know that person,
It
I
ended
know
up
that
being
person.
more than that, but that's
Okay.
my working
Okay.
number.
But I love, again, coming back to this idea of building a community, right? Like, the details don't have to align perfectly. This is why I read in general, right? Like, the details don't have to align perfectly to my life, but I would like to walk away from having read something thinking, huh, I get that.
Well, that was my goal. And I wanted to, if you work in publishing,
Mm-hmm.
as clicky as it seems from the outside,
Mm-hmm.
once you enter it, it's a knowable world.
Yeah,
And
completely.
it's not that big. So the analogy I often give is the number of people is about the size of a small liberal arts college.
Yeah.
So if you don't know someone directly, you know someone who knows them, or know
Mm-hmm.
someone who knows them who knows
Yeah.
them. So when you finish reading my book, I want you to feel like you know the world, that you've
Mm-hmm.
walked away from the world, and that you would be comfortable operating in
Mm-hmm.
it. And that's why there's all these different people. And like, I wanted you to get a sense too of their points of view,
Right.
so that you're at the party too, you're at the table too. And a lot of my favorite nonfiction books give that. They give a sense of, like, you enter into a world
Mm-hmm.
and you leave it, and it could be a world you knew nothing about, but then you get a sense of who the players are.
Okay, you want to drop a couple of examples? Because
Oh yeah, I have one that I thought about so much when I was
uh,
writing this book. It's different, but it's amazing.
okay.
It's called 7 Days in the Art World.
Mm-hmm.
And do you remember this book? It's
I
so good.
do.
It's by an anthropologist. It's each She's giving you an intro to contemporary art. Again, a
Yeah.
very rarefied world. It's full of rich people and eccentrics.
Mm-hmm.
And at each day of these 7 days, you are getting a slice of this world. So one day you're
Mm-hmm.
at an auction house. One day you're at the Venice Biennale, and you're learning how each of these little segments
Mm-hmm.
fits into this universe.
Mm-hmm.
And you leave it and you feel like you can speak knowledgeably about the art world, and you learn a little bit about contemporary art. You learn how it's bought and sold. You learn about these artists. but it's juicy and fun, and a little gossipy. I just read, publishing has five big conglomerates. One of them is SNS, and it was just Simon & Schuster. It was just bought by a private equity company, and everybody is publishing is running around talking about private equity. And I was like, I want to know what that word means, and I don't know what it means.
Right.
I'm running around being like private equity, and I'm like, I literally don't know what it means. So I thought, I'm never going to be a hard business reader. I'm never going to be like a Wall Street Journal reader. But I'm a narrative reader. I like characters. So there's this great book called Bad Company by Megan Greenhill. She worked at Gawker, which was shut down by a private equity company, or Deadspin, sorry. So she was impacted by private equity. And it's this narrative dive where she looks at three different characters and three different industries who are affected by being bought out by private equity. But it's very rich in character and very interesting. There's real life impacts. One of the characters is in a small rural hospital where private equity coming in essentially destroys this community. Characters are very sympathetic. And I left, and now I'm that woman in the meeting who's like, well, I know about private equity. It's like, basically I got an MBA.
I think anytime we can educate ourselves, right? Like, and just have a little bit of a firmer grasp on a thing. I don't know. I get a lot of delight being sort of locked into the world, right? Like, I kind of just want to know. I mean, I'm the person at the party saying, so what? What exactly? Like, I'm sorry, what is that thing? Like,
and I want to encourage that in others. In part because it's given me such joy, in part because I'm an annoying know-it-all. But yeah, I was talking to, I'm not going to name a name here, but I was talking to an editor friend who works in nonfiction. We're talking about the challenges in nonfiction at the moment. It's been a hard couple years for nonfiction sales. Well, we had a couple boom years, and then nonfiction sales are down. And I said, well, what about reading just to learn? And she said, and this my heart dropped. Do people still do that? And
they do.
They also think that reminding readers, people who are inclined to read, delight, that it doesn't learning can be, it's rich. It can be a really rich, rewarding feeling. And also the kind of learning you get from books is really, I think, unique. And so my understanding of private equity, for example, now is so much richer than when I would like quickly read an article online and like agree with like a tweet, and I'm walking around with that for the rest of my life. And it's like having a good meal, it's different than a piece of candy.
I mean, a book gives you time.
Yes.
Right. It marks the passage of time. I mean, in some cases, if you're reading history, hello, welcome to time travel, right? Like there are so many different itches you can scratch with a book, right? And it doesn't necessarily have to be prescriptive. I mean, one of the things that I like about Take It From Me is you made footnotes fun. And I like footnotes have a place, right? Like I love to read an index. I will read any kind of like background material. I like rabbit holes. I really like rabbit holes. And, I see a writer mentioned in the context of something else, and I'm like, oh, who is that? Do I know that? Like, and it's this giant web, right? And you just keep following all of these different lines of inquiry, and then you end up, I don't know, with a thing, or you end up with a community that you might not have expected. And one of the things you talk about too is to MFA or not to MFA, as I call it. You have a master's in English Lit, 19th century novels specifically, and one Jane Austen, which I love. And I love the idea that you're still saying, okay, well, I can do both. Right? Like you need both to really sustain yourself. And I'm one of those booksellers who's like, no, I need fiction and nonfiction. I need words that sing. I need great sentences. I need really voicey stuff. Right. But I do want to talk because, MFAs can be a barrier to entry.
Absolutely.
They're not for everyone. But for, they go through fads, right? Like there's a moment where everyone must have an MFA. And then there's a moment where you're like, you tended bar somewhere? Can I give you a book contract? Like, although I will say those moments are a little fewer and further between now, but there was a moment where it just felt like, okay, we want all of the people who have never
Mm.
seen an MFA in their lives.
Yeah, I mean, what I tried to make clear in the book is that go into your MFA with your eyes open and go in researching the particular program, because not all MFA programs are the same. And it's not even to say there's a hierarchy, and there is, but that, I think a lot of us are intimidated by institutions. So you apply to an MFA program, you're so glad they let you in. Go and talk to the professors and see how they're teaching their courses.
Right.
Get a sense of what is actually happening inside of the classroom and how the school supports its students during and after graduation. Mm-hmm. And I think writers are often operating from a place of intimidation mm-hmm. and scarcity and lack. So they're afraid to ask those questions. They're afraid mm-hmm. to get into a great MFA program, and they're afraid to say, well, what are you actually giving me? I want to empower you to ask that. So that way, if you're going to spend your time in an MFA program, it feels like a good exchange right. of time and money for what you're getting mm-hmm. in return. And think too, one of the pieces of advice I give is that think about how you do your best work. Are you a person who likes long stretches of time where you're uninterrupted? Are you a person who works better in short bursts? That will affect the kind of MFA program you get if you want to work in a city or in the countryside. And allow yourself, if you're going to spend time doing this, to really think about that and ask yourself the hard questions.
Well, that, and also J school, journalism
yes.
school, right, is not the same thing as an MFA. I mean, there are journalists turned novelists, there are novelists turned journalists. Like yes. They do, I mean, they run on parallel tracks, certainly, or, in some cases, they're Venn diagrams and the intersection is pretty significant. But I think any kind of grad program, whether it's an MA, an MFA, J school, what have you, I think it really just depends on the person, right? Like not everyone is served with a blanket sort of statement of more school.
And nor do any of these, and I have this whole chapter I have on education, I ended with two writers who did not do this kind of education and have become very successful. Because I don't want the message to be that you have to. I want the message to be there are lots of different paths, and this is what these different paths look like. And with journalism, it's a very particular type of writing, and as well as a trade you're learning. And it's not for everyone. I don't think one path is more worthy than the other. And I think that if you are going to go the thing that an MFA can often give you, and often J school can give you, is relationships. Yeah. And that is very important to writing. It's important to have other readers. It's important to have a community of readers, a community of people to support you throughout your career. So no matter what, you should, I think as a writer, be thinking of how you're going to get those writer colleagues in your life that will grow with you as you mature as a writer.
But also, at the risk of sounding like the queen of the obvious, which I'm going to do anyway for a second, I mean, the idea of being able to build community, that's why you tell stories. That's why any of us tells a story. It's like, how do I build something out of this story? And that thing is always going to be community, whether it's readers around the world or just on your block or in your house. It's like, how do you build community out of story? How do you make that connection? And, it's great if you can turn that into book sales as well, but there's something really, it's so, when you go to an event, right, like when you're at a bookstore and you're in an event or like any kind of community center, just the energy, right, the buzz in the room, and everyone's kind of like, well, I'm a fan bound. And it's not just Comic-Con, right? It's not just a certain kind of show that's dependent on one kind of fan. It's just when you feel the buzz and the energy, it's great. It's so good. I cannot recommend it enough. Like, be in the world, right? Be also in the world.
The community goes in a bunch of different directions.
It does.
Not just the writer and their reader. You as the reader, there's hearing and there's speaking. So you as the reader are taking something in. And if you're part of a writerly community, you also want to think about what kind of reader you are.
Yes.
And for the people around you. And when you go to that event, it's, you can laser focus on the person reading. Or you could also think about the people around you. And those people could be future comrades, so to speak. Yep. And that's what I love about an event, is that you get a sense of, okay, we're the two weirdos who showed up to see this writer. Yep. We already have something in common. that is real and beautiful, and that's really exciting.
I, just being able to hold a book, right? And listen, some people prefer audiobooks, some people prefer to read just
I like a book.
however you like to read, that's how you read. I do happen to like paper. I can read across whatever format because sometimes you just got to read a thing quickly and that means you're looking at a PDF on your phone as you're getting on a plane. Like, I mean, but there's
Among Us hasn't.
right? But like being able to hold a book, also I dog ear. I will own it. I dog ear. I write all
Oh,
over
see,
things.
I am not precious.
Oh yeah, I mean a book to me is a living thing, right? Like it is not, and my reference library is kind of bananas and there are
Same.
copies of
This
things where
is
I'm like, how is this, bindings break, all sorts of things because I mean it's more about the story that's contained within, right? Or the sentences. Like I'm a big like
before we started,
yeah.
I won't bring it down, but we were talking about how you read Middlemarch, and I read Middlemarch for the first time my first semester in college. I took a whole
Okay.
class on Middlemarch, and I still have my copy, and it is held together by rubber bands.
Yep.
And I'm never going to replace it. That is
Yep.
my copy. And it still has my notes from when I
Mhm.
was 18. And when I go back, I reread it every few years.
Yeah.
I see, oh my God, this is what moved me when I
Right.
was 18. And it's totally different things that move me
Well,
now as I've grown up. And it's so precious to me. So this library in my house is a
yeah.
living thing. There are post-its, things are
Yep.
falling apart, and that's what makes it mine.
Right, right. But also part of the fun for me, like I'm reading, the Colossus of New York, Colson Whitehead's book
Mm,
about all of the changes in New York, and then I get the Harlem trilogy, right? And I'm like, oh, I see we're still thinking about, and I love the Harlem trilogy. I love a heist novel. I mean,
I haven't
it's
read
so
it.
fun. You will enjoy. They're
I
just
also love a heist novel. I also love
whiz bang,
anything set in New York. I'm a,
right?
yeah, as much as I love to travel in my literature, I also love to go deep, and
Yep.
I love that. Because it also, when I read about New York,
Hmm.
it makes me re-see the city I'm in. Like I was just
Exactly.
one of my, I love House of Mirth, and it
Mhm.
opens with this beautiful scene in Grand Central,
Yep.
which still exists. Oh, God, I'm hoping it wasn't the old Penn Station. It's a New York City train station. Every time I go to Grand Central,
Right.
I imagine I'm in House of Mirth.
Hmm.
And I was just there getting cocktails the other night, and I was like pretending I was Lily Bart, and I a 48-year-old woman pretending she's Lily Bart. But it's like it makes me see anew and feel the
Hmm.
history of my city. And of course, I like New York nonfiction. I read a lot of
Right.
every New York history that comes out. I want to read it. And because I walk through my beautiful city, and I love that I have this depth of understanding
Yep.
of the place that I live in.
So you know what still holds is Up in the Old Hotel.
Oh,
I
it's good.
reread the titular essay a couple weeks again. Like
I haven't
the
read
rabbit
it.
holes I go down when I'm prepping for shows is just it's wild to me sometimes. I should have done more independent study when I was in school. That's really what it comes down to. But
That's having a lifetime of reading is a lifetime
right?
of
It's
study.
so good. It
And then
really
nobody
is.
can tell you what to do. You're just like, whatever, I'm going to do this today.
But Joseph Mitchell, I mean, seriously, that book, Up in the Old Hotel, probably came out in 91. Everyone's parents had it. Everyone who was
Yes.
young had it. Like it didn't matter how old you were or how young everyone had that book. And I still have a really, really old paperback copy. My galley has, I, I'm pretty sure I know who I loaned that galley to, and it was never coming back. And I knew it when I sent it out. But I have a really old, the pages are yellowing. It's, I mean, it's completely destroyed. But oh, and he wrote it in like, I don't know, 1950 something. And about a building that was built in the 1800s and really had its heyday in the 30s. What? And it's fantastic. And it feels like New York right now.
I should reread
Yeah,
it. I
it
haven't
was
read it
wild.
since I was a baby New Yorker.
I had not read it in ages either. And I was like, oh, yeah. Or like the way Eve Babbitt writes about Los Angeles or the way Didion writes
Totally.
about Los Angeles. You get Griffin Dunne's book, Friday Afternoon Club, and the way he writes about that Franklin Avenue house and the way his aunt writes about the Franklin Avenue house, it's like, oh,
I love,
oh,
I also like, I love that sense of when you're reading about a rich place and
yeah.
you get the different perspectives, and it
Hmm.
just feels kaleidoscopic. And that's, I mean, that's of course why New York is that kind of city, but there's certain cities I love reading about. I love reading about Paris.
Yeah.
Um, And that, yeah, again, this sense that I'm always looking at something I love, but from a new seat. And that's very exciting to me.
How does it feel to finish the book, though? I mean, this is stuff you think about and talk about all the time. And I mean, obviously, there's the Substack too, but now it's here.
So good. It feels so good.
Okay.
Oh, like the best feeling.
Okay.
I can't. So one thing you should know about nonfiction, so I explain in detail in my book, is that you write a proposal. So you sell the book, you don't have a book written. And then you wake up and you're like, wait, I have to write a book. And of course you're filled with dread and you think maybe you can't.
Right.
And all these people are expecting you to do it. So that it hangs over you like for years. And the way that I always think of it is I love A Christmas Carol. It was like the ghost of Christmas yet to come. It was like he was at the foot of my bed every day, like pointing at me, pointing, saying, go sit in your chair and write your book. And then when I finished it, I felt it was honest to God, when it was sent off to production, the happiest day of my life. I went to the ice cream shop in my neighborhood. And I got like a big thing of ice cream. And then I got more ice cream. I got double, like I ate like my the equivalent of my head in ice cream. And they're like, what is wrong with this woman? She's gonna throw up. And I say that because it's very hard to stay motivated.
Right.
It's very hard to work on a book when you have a job. But for me, having it be a discrete amount of time that was very, very hard, and knowing it was over, and it had a clear end, and then the end, I got a book out of it.
Right.
Worth it. But it was so hard, but it was so awesome. And that was the best ice cream I've ever had.
Oh, that I believe. That I totally believe. I just also like the idea that we can keep putting information out into the world, right? Like you do this every day. You have relationships with editors, and yet your relationship as the writer with your editor is not quite the same as being the agent and the editor. So we can have this sort of evolution, right? Like our art can represent, like evolve with us kind of thing. Our books can evolve with us. Our relationships within what we do.
Okay, I didn't think I'd be a person who would write a book. That wasn't 10 years ago. I didn't have the idea for this book.
Right.
And it's actually like it's a wonderful thing to be, and I'm not that young. So to think, oh, my whole life is ahead of me. What comes next? Like what is in my 50s, maybe I'll do something totally different.
Right.
And also for me, I've done this job for a while now of being an agent, to have this kind of document, this testament to how I've been, and to have it codified. It's a very gratifying feeling and very empowering. And I think for that, I ultimately, as hard as it was to write a book, I recommend it. I'm pro book writing.
Well, I'm glad to hear that because I'm pro book selling. And you know, I get a lot of pleasure out of what I do. But the other thing that I really appreciate about the book is how transparent you are and how transparent our colleagues are, right? Like, I think there are a lot of folks, and you see a lot of stuff on the internet if you live in the 21st century, and you can't have a conversation with every single person on the internet. You cannot jump into those and frankly, some people just don't want to hear it. So, I mean, if someone comes to the book, learns a thing, and then is able to spread that information amongst their set, right? That's rock on. That you are doing service.
That's my hope. And my hope was too that removing some of the barriers to entry by simply explaining things in a fun and accessible, transparent way would kind of raise the bar for everyone. Because I don't want someone to not write their amazing memoir or research their amazing work of history,
right? Because
they can't figure out how to pitch an agent, or how to find an agent they really love, or how to build a platform. Like I wanted to help with that for people who are curious enough to know.
Well, and part of it is too, honestly, there are people who are going to do the work no matter what, right? Like they're just going to do the thing, and maybe it gets published and maybe it doesn't, or, you know, John Kennedy Toole comes to mind. And if you don't recognize the name, you can Google this.
Oh, I know.
I know, you know, just in case listeners might not. It's been a minute since Confederacy of Dunces came out. But I do think I do think context is good to have. And the amount of context that you provide in a fun, witty way, like the book sounds like you. The book really sounds like you. And again, footnotes. The footnotes are fun, and the footnotes are very you. And I'm a fan of footnotes.
Thank you.
I'm a fan of footnotes though in fiction too, and people think I'm a total weirdo for that. But I'm like, where am I? Again, it's the rabbit hole thing, right? Like there can be, even if you're writing something like, okay, Darkness Visible, William Styron, not a light read, but that book probably did a lot of good.
Oh my God. It changed lives.
Exactly. So I'm kind of like, you know what, take your swing, learn a thing. But by the way, here's this reference that you might want to work with.
Right. And I mean, that was certainly the spirit that I wrote it in. Also, because I mean, in my job, I deal with anxious authors all the time. And you were talking about how does it feel to have a book. Once my book was written, I stopped being anxious. I think the chillest author on promotion you'll ever meet. Why? It's not because I'm a super chill person.
Right.
I'm not a chill person. It's because I know what to expect because I've done this job for 15 years. Right. So I wanted to bring that to authors. So if they're in this crazy world of getting a book published, everything isn't just a disorienting surprise. I'm able to be a calm author because I know the rhythms, I know what happens when, I know what the different roles are. Mm-hmm. I know what I can control and what I can't control, which is huge. And that will make an author better at being an author, better at concentrating on the stuff that will actually help their book versus sending their publicist emails at, 10 p.m. on a Saturday, which nobody needs to be doing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, it's true. It's absolutely true. So yeah, we're hitting time because we knew this was going to happen, and we will come back to Middlemarch and Jane Austen and all of that in a different conversation.
Follow-up conversation.
But in the meantime, I do want you to shout out your Substack because I think your newsletter is really interesting and I think it's really helpful, and it works in conjunction with the book. Like you can do both things. So let's shout that out.
I wanted to practice what I preached and actually build a platform. Yeah. So I launched a Substack about a year before the book comes out, which is important. You can't just launch a Substack right when your book comes out. You want to create the runway. So Substack is called Delivery and Acceptance. Right. And if you look at the Substack, you can even find out what the little publishing in joke is with that title. And it's different than the book in that it's just interviews. It's all interview based. I interview everyone from agents to editors to a woman who runs metadata at Penguin Random House to a book to film agent who sells film rights to books, to give people a sense of the real people who do these jobs, how we make our decisions, how to work with us, how to find us. And I try to do it in a really accessible and fun way.
And I will vouch for it.
Thank you.
I will totally vouch.
Thank you.
Oh, Alia, this was so much fun.
This was so fun.
I'm really glad the book is out in January. And, this might be the year that someone writes a memoir or finally publishes a history or does whatever. It's just, we'll see.
If one book comes out of this book, I will have done my work and I will feel so happy. So please keep me posted.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. This was great.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. Poured Over is a Barnes & Noble production. To help other readers find us, please rate and review the show wherever you listen to podcasts.